History of Western Philosophy is a 1946 work of non-fiction by the British philosopher Bertrand Russell. When Russell won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1950, it was cited as one of his best works. Over the years, it's come in for criticism from some of the specialists in the different areas it covers. Russell was a liberal pacifist. By today's standards, he was extremely left-wing, and some of the sections reflect that. He's particularly harsh on Hegel, Nietzsche, and Marx. In many ways, however, it's a work of philosophy in its own right and consciously intended as such. In any case, it may not be possible to write a value-free history. Russell is arguably one of the 20th century's most remarkable British philosophers and public intellectuals. He came from an exceptionally privileged background. His adolescence was lonely, but he had a talent for mathematics. He went to Cambridge, where he met Alfred North Whitehead, with whom he worked to reduce mathematics to logic. The two men eventually wrote a 3-volume groundbreaking text on the subject. He was one of the main drivers behind what was later called the linguistic turn in philosophy, the idea that the central problems of philosophy have to do with language and can be solved by a critical analysis of the sentences used to express those problems. In 1910, he became a lecturer at Cambridge and subsequently a mentor to Ludwig Wittgenstein, for whose 1921 Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus he wrote the introduction. Just as important to Russell as his technical philosophical work were his forays into politics. He was an advocate of free love, a pacifist for which he was jailed during World War I, an opponent of colonialism, a radical atheist, and a passionate campaigner for nuclear disarmament. He died in 1970 at the age of 97. History of Western philosophy is divided into 3 sections: ancient philosophy, Catholic philosophy, and modern philosophy. It also includes an exhaustive index. Its biggest weakness from the point of view of the 21st century reader is that it's not very good on 20th century philosophy, but that's because it was written in 1946. It finishes with a chapter called The Philosophy of Logical Analysis, which was Russell's own field. Despite its weaknesses, it has 3 overriding strengths. First is its astonishing clarity. There's no attempt to bamboozle the reader with tortuous grammar or technical vocabulary, and no attempt to talk down. In fact, that's one of the things Russell most strongly objects to in philosophers like Hegel, their reputed difficulty. This is a book for the general reader with little or no background in the subject and who genuinely wants to know about it for its own sake. The book's second strength is that it can be dipped into. For the reader who simply wants to know about, say, Descartes, the section on Descartes makes perfect sense in its own right, and each section is short enough, about 10 pages on average, to be read over a cup of coffee. The third strength, and this is standard in history of philosophy nowadays, is that Russell puts the development of the discipline in its social and cultural context. There's a whole chapter on Byron, for example, who's probably no one's idea of a technical philosopher, but who expresses and personifies important tendencies of the age. There are, of course, lots of other introductions to Western philosophy. Russell's still an important philosopher today, although he's been out of fashion for a long time now. Strange when you think about it that philosophy should have fashions, but it definitely does.